Imagine you've gone for a really long walk on a hot and sunny day. You're very thirsty and out of water. Suddenly, you pass by a convenience shop. You need to get water immediately, and so you walk into the shop and grab a cold bottle of water and walk towards the counter. You look into your wallet and take out a few notes, or maybe some metallic object with some engravings on it. Just by exchanging the metal or notes, you get to finally quench your thirst. That is basically the use of money. For exchange. On the flip side, if you didn't have money at that particular point in time, you would not have been able to purchase that bottle of water. To simply put, money in this day and age is a commodity, mostly in the form of a paper note or a coin, which is accepted by everyone as a medium of economic exchange. Because of money, people are able to create prices and express values, and it circulates from person to person and country to country. Money makes trade and the principal measure of wealth possible. Sure, money is just like any other paper or metal, yet the labels we have given them, such as euro, dollar, yuan, and others, make it different and special from other materials such as the newspaper. As you know, if you have money, you will be able to do so much more other than command the measure of food, drink, clothing, and other necessities for human life. A brief history of money. Before the money we use today, there was the barter trade, but its inconvenience made it possible for this kind of money to emerge. Now, mind you, we use this form of exchange because most people have an understanding of its usage and has agreed to use it. And so now money has come to be a social convention and a convention of uncommon strength that people have always abided by, even under extreme provocation. The conventions are the means by which various governments profit. They do this by inflating the currency, and by this, I mean by increasing the quantity of money. When the quantity of money increases greatly, just as it did during and after the major wars, money becomes more than just a piece of paper. When the social arrangements that maintain money's status as a medium of exchange break down, people will search for substitutes. In case you did not know, for a period of time, cigarettes and cognac served as a medium of exchange in Germany after the Second World War. And so just like that, it is quite logical to say that new money may substitute for old money under other equally or even less extreme situations or circumstances. The proof is in the pudding. Where and when there is money, there is also the issue of inflation. In countries that have flirted with high inflation in the past, such as Israel, Argentina, or even Russia, prices of goods quoted in a different currency, such as the US dollar, varied widely compared to their local currencies, due to the fact that the dollar had a much more stable value. Such countries may also accept the dollar as its medium of exchange because the dollar, for instance, is well known and offer more stable purchasing power than its local currency. You already have an idea of what money makes possible, but it doesn't hurt to dig deeper. Perhaps we may discover something more. Ready? Let's get right to it. Money enables us to buy and sell. It separates the system of buying from selling in such a way that trade can take place without the use of barter. Even if the system of barter would take place, it will be in the form of credit. But even before the seller would agree to do this, he would want to know the prospects of payment. These prospects in most cases include more information and verification about the buyer, which in turn imposes the costs of information and verification that the use of money does not require, at least in most cases. If you know how the system of barter works, you would realize that if you had something but needed something else, let's say you had a bicycle but needed soybeans, you would have to look for someone who had soybeans and needed a bicycle. As you can see, this will be very difficult because it could be a whole day's task searching for someone who needed the things you had and had the things you needed, and let alone the quantity of beans that could fit the value of the bicycle you own. Not forgetting the fact that you would probably need the bicycle later, then what would you do? Exactly. So the use of money made things much simpler. Money made it possible for people to be able to sell a surplus item for general purchasing power, money, to anyone who wants to buy it, and then use the proceeds to buy the desired item from anyone who wants to sell it. If money is indeed the means and the generally accepted medium of exchange, then why is it worthless? Stay with me as we discuss how our modern money became worthless. First of all, what do I mean by the term worthless, you ask? What comes to mind when we say that something is completely worthless? In simple terms, when something is worthless, it means it has no value, importance, qualities, or usefulness. The definition contradicts the importance and even the need for money in the first place, right? But we have also just talked about how much money makes the buying and selling of goods and services easier, right? We both agree that money makes our life less complicated. However, some aspects of money have dragged it to the point of worthlessness. By the end of this discussion, you will agree with me that at this point, money has indeed become very worthless. Just stay with me. Allow me lay down my arguments, and you come to a conclusion of your own. At one point in history, economic advisors were shocked when Franklin Roosevelt announced that he was taking the U.S. off the gold standard. To them, this was dangerous because taking the dollar off the gold standard would most likely put the USA into uncontrolled inflation and complete chaos, and eventually bring an end to Western civilization. This was from the conventional wisdom perspective. This is because in those times the gold standard was the agreed form and most natural way to use money, which means the agreed term was that in order for any country to trade, a fixed amount of gold was needed to back the paper money. This makes a whole lot of sense because, for instance, if the amount for an ounce of gold was $20.67 each year, then that unchanging value made up the whole point of the gold standard. And so it would mean that without gold, money will then become just any other kind of paper. Yes, literally any paper. But then there is the downside of the gold standard. Apparently, the system of gold standard is part of what brought about the Great Depression. Money is perceived as part of the natural order of things, just as how gravity supports water. And so the idea of money not being backed by gold was like gravity ceasing to support water. It wouldn't make sense. Well, money isn't backed by gold anymore if you didn't already know. Going back in history, in AD 100, a Chinese court official invented money from paper made out of a mash of mulberry bark, rags, and fishnets with writings on it. These writings later evolved into printed notes, whereby the writings for the notes was carved into a block of wood and then stamped onto the sheet. From there, another merchant who was tired of receiving lots of coins as payment invented the system of claim checks whereby customers would leave their coins with him in return for a piece of paper that held the value to buy items. And from there, the government took up the responsibility of printing paper money. Paper money, as you know, made trading a lot easier. Being a new technology in itself, paper money increased the exchange of ideas and more economic specialization, which in turn made others find it possible to grow more food and become innovative. In China, it made the economy richer. But then there was a downside. Paper money paved a way for the rulers to print more money, which in turn brought about inflation. Sounds like a country I know copied this blueprint. Anyway, in our era, the technology we have helps us to move money using supercomputers. It is expected that in the future, technology will drive more dramatic changes in money. Another thing to note about money is that it is both private and public. What do I mean by that? It means, as digital currency continues to evolve, the tension between the government and private firms also grows. And mind you, cryptocurrency adds to the tension. Crypto's dream is to be more private, so it doesn't need the government or even the bank. In this case, if crypto manages to become like our ordinary money, thus, if it begins to gain the characteristics of money and have more people believe in its value and accept it as a means of exchange, it would not be a purely private libertarian money, but instead, a public-private hybrid that our current money already is. You may probably be thinking that for money to be able to maintain its value and worth, it must be stable. It may sound a bit controversial, but the truth is, this perception is not very true. A fact you never ever hear in the mainstream is that money is riskier when it is very stable. Money market is proof of this. Money market was established in the 1970s, and the whole idea behind it was to offer something like a bank account, but paid higher interest. And in this way, investors could put money into their system, which would then be lent out, gain interest, and then paid back to the investors. The system sounded convincing and a way to get rich quicker, and so it attracted a lot of people and companies who put a lot into this money market fund in the name of safekeeping. This system was much similar to the banking system with the exception that the investments were not guaranteed by the federal government. Now in 2008, an investment bank, the Lehman Brothers, went bankrupt, and so they got $785 million as loan. Once the other investors learned that the loan may probably not be repaid because of the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy, they started demanding their money back, but that could not be done. The thing is that once an investment that was safe starts to become risky, it creates a lot of instability and panic. And as a result, investors started redrawing the money they put into the money bank, but some weren't able to get back all their money. Eventually, the government had to step in to prevent a broader economic collapse. This is just a simplified version of what happened. Now, what am I driving at? Money in every essence is a very important and valuable part of human life. Money runs the world. And so in instances where it could be deemed unimportant or worthless, then it could create a lot of problems. Here are some reasons why we could categorize money as becoming worthless. The first thing you may have been seeing everywhere, and will probably agree with me when I point it out, is that we have a continuously negative interest rates, which is doing more harm than good to the value of money. Negative interest rates have been experienced before, but how is this different from the ones that have been experienced in the past? If, for instance, you have $500 and you decide to do what you know best by putting the amount into the bank at the beginning of the year, when you decide to finally go and check up on your money or withdraw the amount you put there for something important, and then, to your dismay, you find out that the money has reduced drastically, then it means that you have experienced a negative interest rate. This situation is affecting money negatively. The next thing to point out is that every country you know and do not know is facing ridiculous amounts of debt. It is fascinating that the globe is in a $277 trillion amount of debt. To who exactly? Surprisingly, the globe apparently owes these amounts to the population or other businesses. How so? Well, these debts amount from the products and services that people and businesses provide, but the government fails to pay for. This greatly affects the value of money. The more the government owes, the steeper the currency declines. On top of that, revenues were reduced during the pandemic, and the relief measures that were put in place to help people and governments cope with the impact of the pandemic increased global debt by $20 trillion since the third quarter of 2019. And so, at this point, every country in the world is sinking more and more into debt, without any means of getting out of the situation. We are at a point of sinking sand. We might as well brace ourselves for what comes next. Every country is probably looking forward to the day when a global event will shake the world to the extent that all of the debts will be forgiven. And what would that be? I have no answer for that. Another thing is that, as already discussed, money is no longer backed by anything of value. As already pointed out, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. Up until that point, and what I mean by this is that before gold was taken off money, no other country was allowed to print more money than they could support with gold reserves. And this was good because no one could lie about their money and its value. Or maybe the powerful ones found a way to game the system. They always do. You never know. The point here is that from the moment at which gold was eliminated as the backing for money, the US dollar began to serve as the international reserve company. And so in some countries, they keep the US dollar in their treasury, the same way gold was once used. This works in the favor of only the US because with their position clearly and firmly stated, they are able to print as much money as they want. And mind you, the US owes China over $1 trillion of US dollars. If this is the case, then the money is backed by nothing because it cannot be backed by money that is owed. Another thing is that more and more money keeps being printed every day. We already know that the US can print any amount of money they want. Will you be surprised if I told you that more than 20% of the money in circulation in the US was printed in 2020? Don't believe me? You might want to have a quick look at how much money was printed during the pandemic when no one was looking. The future of the value of money is affected because even more was printed in 2021, and in so doing, they would have increased the US dollar supply by 40%, which of course is a big problem, because you know what this means, right? One thing you are experiencing and can totally agree with is that you are being forced into inflated assets. Tell me I'm wrong. Maybe you are thinking of investing your money into something more profitable such as real estate, which is a totally great idea. But what you probably do not know is that real estate has been hyperinflated. How much did it cost to rent a place some few years ago? Now compare the price to now. You get it? The houses are the same as it was. The price has just increased, which indicates that the purchasing power of money has reduced significantly. It is a one-way to hell at this point. Next on the list of the downward spiral of money is that the government is giving it away to buy time. Yes, you heard right. There's a lot of free stuff being given these days, such as free money. This is not a political statement, but you should know that nothing in this world is truly free. Surely there is something going on. The free money which is being given out as free money is to prepare people for the crisis that would later unfold. Once there is free money, there will be hyperinflation, and when this happens, the value of money becomes very questionable. The truth can hurt sometimes. I will urge you to open your eyes and see what is happening around you if you haven't seen it already. There's nothing like a free lunch. In today's world, money basically exists as just some numbers on the screen. What do I mean by this? Hear me out. Money keeps on being printed every year and almost every day. And even though you can send money from your phone or wherever to another person, the actual money does not really leave your bank to another bank, but rather, the numbers just change on your screen, a change which the bank also debits or credits to your account. You probably do this every day. Let's say you decide to buy something online with your bank card. Now what you realize is that once the payment goes through, you most likely receive an alert from your bank, which shows that an amount has been deducted from your account. This does not necessarily mean that someone at the bank quickly takes the money from your bank account and sends it to the vendor on your behalf. Instead, what just happens is that the numbers reduce. This basically points out the fact that money is not actually real. It's all some numbers generated on the screen. It can be pointed out that hedge funds and traders are totally abusing the system of money. The fact is that hedge funds and traders do not really add value to society or to the future of money. This is because they do not create value in any way. What they do is that they use the financial rules of the game to move imaginary money from one column to another and keep a portion of this money to themselves. Let's say it as it is. They are legally gaming the system. Wait up, I'm not done yet. There is something called the universal basic income. Do you know what this is? Well, this is just one of the utopian concepts that are mostly being discussed by new thinking people as one of the solutions to all our problems. It doesn't matter whether you support this system or not. The entire concept of this system is very flawed to its core, such that it is just a matter of time before there is a collapse, and a majority of people vote themselves into higher pay. The population will in fact vote into power anyone who promises them higher pay, which will draw them into a financial situation that is not sustainable, thereby eventually collapsing money, making it become worthless. The pandemic was a perfect example for this. And before you go on about this and that, remember that if the system collapses, it is you and I who will suffer most. The leaders don't care about us. They will do anything to stay in power. Let me repeat myself once more. There is nothing like a free lunch. The free lunch in the form of universal basic income will come back in tenfolds with venom to haunt us. The proverbial word to the wise. And then there's Bitcoin. These days, Bitcoin is everywhere on our planet, and its usage and fan base is gradually increasing, which in some time to come will probably challenge the value of our old means of exchange. Thus, if you believe that, I'm sure you've heard, most companies are now moving their money from dollars into Bitcoin. Apparently, Bitcoin is now being seen as the future of money, and as you know, the more people perceive it as such, the more it will become. And in case you haven't noticed, MicroStrategy has moved over $1.6 billion into Bitcoin, and Tesla has also moved $1.5 billion into Bitcoin, and so other companies also followed suit. And as it turns out, Tesla made a whole lot of profit from the Bitcoin bull run than they did selling cars since its inception. This makes Bitcoin definitely a thing. At this rate, what do you think will happen to our money if crypto takes over? As of now, the dollar is gradually losing its purchasing power, and it has even gotten to the point where companies are being forced to purchase cryptocurrency in order to save themselves from inflation in the market. Now we can say that Bitcoin is superior to money in some ways. Just know that every single time money is being printed, you are being robbed of your wealth, and Bitcoin was created to work against that. That is, to separate the currency from the government's reserve. And oh, Bitcoin has a fixed amount that will ever be allowed in circulation. Now let's look at the stock market. One thing you would realize is that it is no longer correlated to the economy. Why is this so? In the past, the stock market was the reflection of the economy, but in this day and age, it is not the same. Look at this for instance. When the economy was entering into a shutdown because of the pandemic, the stock market rose really high, and even when 20 trillion was lost in revenue globally, the stock market kept rising. Isn't that odd? The world we live in today requires an index for the quality of life and economic performance, yet even the system of retirement is not going that well. And so, if you don't have a contingency plan for your later years, then you would be in big trouble. And so you see, it is not very promising. One thing again that does not help the value of money very much is that the rich are the ones dictating the price of things in the world. I am no hater of the rich and powerful, but as you know, we live in a world which works by buying and selling. And in case you have not noticed, almost everything on the market is owned by the rich. And the advantage of the rich being the seller is that all they need to do is state the price. And the rest of us in the market would have to look for means and ways to come up with the money to pay for the goods. And the crazy thing about money is that when the price is stated and you cannot afford it, you will have to let go for someone else to buy the item. This is the basic reason why basic home prices are going through the roof, and as a result, everything is expensive these days. Money is becoming worthless because banks are giving out loans in imaginary money. We have already talked about the fact that money is not that real, like how you perceive it to be, and at this point in our conversation, would you be surprised to learn that the banks are lending out money that doesn't even exist in the first place? Yeah, I know how this sounds, but think about it for a second. If money isn't real, then how can banks lend money? You know, banks are allowed to give out. And by giving out, I mean they are allowed to lend 10 times more the amount of money they own. Yeah, you heard right, 10 times. The thing is that the system is totally rigged in favor of the banks. And it is also mainly due to the fact that banks are overly confident that they will get their money back. That's why they are able to lend out as much money as they want, even when they do not have those amounts of money in their account. Money has become outdated and diluted, and so it is losing its value very quickly. As human as we are, everyone is looking for other alternatives, just as our currencies replace the barter trade. This is the reason why many other alternatives have emerged, such as cryptocurrencies, mostly in the form of a store of value, but it has not proven efficient for the exchange of all of the goods and service which is needed immediately. With the value of money spiraling down uncontrollably, and the new digital interplanetary currencies that are being developed, it is just a matter of time until money completely loses its worth, and of which we are now experiencing. The effects of worthless money are the slower pace of future cash flow, collapsed interest rates, and risk premiums. You, my friend, are witnessing the collapse of money as we know it in a front row seat. Do all you can so it doesn't sink into quicksand with you. Put measures in place so you survive the fall. I am not a doomsday prophet. A word to the wise is enough. Hit the like and subscribe button if you enjoyed and learned something in this video. You could also share it with a friend. It really does help the channel grow. My name is Audio Boy Manny, and I am not a doomsday prophet. Cheers.